All right. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. You know who I am. I'm your favorite professor, Prof. Kyle. And I got a very special guest. For me, very special because the man I got in front of me right now is one of, I would say inspiration, but he had a lot of good data when I was first researching about going down to Colombia for the first time in 2015. And the reading his stories, reading the information that he wrote about, really got me excited to go to the country. And basically, once I got there, I loved it just as much as he did. So I want to welcome Scotian to the show. Scotian, how are you doing?
Great. Hola todos. I'm very good here in the capital city of Colombia, Bogota, even though it's currently raining. Hopefully that'll stop soon and I can go outside.
Mhm. Now, I want to talk about a lot of things with Scotian. So, of course, we're going to start first about his backstory. And I'm glad to have him on because he's from the East Coast of Canada. And the people from the East Coast of Canada, for anybody learning English, have a very unique accent, even though his isn't as strong because he's not from Newfoundland. Newfoundlanders, they have a stronger accent. Maybe we'll start with that. First, for everybody listening, we're going to talk about Scotian's backstory. He also works in the oil patch in Alberta, where I'm from. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing this hockey jersey, because I thought, I got nothing to wear. I'll wear the Edmonton Oilers jersey, represents the oil patch workers. And so we'll talk about the oil patch. We'll talk about Colombia. And of course, I'm pretty sure Scotians learned Spanish with all his time in Colombia. So we'll talk about learning Spanish and all about that. But first, Scotian, tell us, where are you from?
Okay, so I'm from the east coast of Canada, Atlantic Canada. So it's a really big country. If you could imagine perhaps Chile or Argentina, except turn it that way, and it's
Yeah,
even double. I
yeah.
think if you were to drive from the Pacific coast, Vancouver, to the east coast, where I'm from, Halifax, is about 60 hours of driving. So that would be, 5 days, you're driving 12 hours every day. Anyway, so yeah, I grew up in a small fishing village, actually, mostly lobster. We're famous for our lobster there. Nice place, small village, though, a few thousand people, but very typically Canadian. We all played hockey, and the demographics, it's all white Canadian people. There's some French speakers there. It was an Acadian um, town, but probably since the 70s, not too many people speak French anymore. So it's an English speaking town. But on the east
Mhm.
coast of Canada, of course, there's more French population. So yeah, I grew up there. I went to university there. Um, I was working in Halifax in the city, where the village I grew up in is about a half an hour from Halifax. So I studied in university. I studied French. I was going to be a French teacher. Alors, je
Okay.
parle très bien le français. Hein?
Mhm.
So after I graduated university in 2006, at that time, there wasn't a lot of work in my city. The east coast of Canada, Atlantic Canada in general, is
Mhm.
known as a place with higher unemployment than the rest of the country. So, as Kyle can tell you, in 2006, there was a major oil boom going on.
Mhm.
It started around 2014, or sorry, 2004 or 2005, and it lasted for a solid 10 years
Mhm.
of just an amazing amount of work. People from all over the country and all over the world were moving to Alberta. So my brother was there. I had several friends from school, from my small town, that moved there. So I graduated university and there wasn't many opportunities for work in my city. So of course I moved to the west, to the province of Alberta, where Kyle's from, and I moved to the capital, Edmonton, where I still live. I bought my condo, my apartment there 11 years ago, and I started working in oil and gas. So when I first arrived, having a bachelor's degree in French and history didn't get me much work in Alberta. So I went back to school,
Mhm.
took a 3 month, what they call a pre-employment technical course in my trade, which is welding inspection.
Mhm.
So I got a job uh, right away, and I began working in my trade and my job, and that was in 2000. 2007. And then I started working and I've been working since. So the great thing about working in the oil industry in Canada anyway, is that you can do seasonal work, which is what I do. I generally work from about April until November, because in Alberta, from November until about April, again, as Kyle can tell you, it's really, really cold.
Yeah.
It's one of the coldest regions in the world, really. Every year, there's at least a couple of days where there's a town in the province of Alberta that's the coldest town in the world on that particular day. So it can be minus 40, even minus 50 Celsius. So I think it was about 2 weeks ago, around Christmas time, there was, a cold snap, we call it, like a ola de frio.
Mhm.
And so where I'm from in Nova Scotia, because it's near the ocean, it doesn't get that cold. And I looked up the temperature in my city, Halifax, it was around 10 degrees. In Alberta, it was minus 40. So if you can imagine a temperature difference of 50 degrees Celsius, it's pretty extreme. So I worked for 3 or 4 winters in Alberta, excuse me, and I couldn't do it. I never got used to it. So I decided to just do the seasonal work, and I've been doing that since. And I guess that leads us into our next question there, Kyle.
No, no, I still got lots of follow-up questions for you. Want to talk? Well, first, I want to talk about the Maritimes. So for anybody watching this, for Canadians, we call where Scotians from the Maritimes. And the Maritime provinces are Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. And obviously for all Canadians, when you're in school, you learn about the Canadian geography. So I've never been there. So in a way, it's always kind of made me curious. And of course, I'm from Alberta and I'm from the oil patch area where Scotian works. So I've come across you mostly notice the Newfies, because Newfies have the strongest accent out of all the Canadians. So I want to talk about the Maritimes. Growing up there, is there any rivalries between the provinces? Like even for Nova Scotians, do they make fun of the Newfies? Is there much interaction between the provinces, or is it each one is very secluded? What is it like to grow up in the Maritimes?
Yeah, there's not much rivalry. I mean, we all make fun of the Newfies just because they're so different in their mannerisms and their speech, but we're all, similar people, like the Atlantic provinces. We're all very similar. These are the least multicultural provinces in all of Canada. They're basically 98% white Canadians, and our roots go back generally a long way. So Nova Scotia is Latin for New Scotland. In Espanol es la Nueva Scotia. Mm-hmm. So myself, for example, all of my family on both maternal and paternal sides came from Scotland. So there's a lot of Scottish, English, and then French from the Acadian population. And there's some indigenous populations there, but for historical reasons, there's not as many natives as there would be, for example, in Alberta. So these are small places. So Nova Scotia, the population is maybe 1 million, maybe a little bit more now. The biggest city, my city, is Halifax, 400,000 people. And the closest city with a larger population than Halifax in Canada is Quebec City. That's a 10-hour drive. Or Boston in the United States. Again, it's a 10-hour drive. So we're isolated and remote, and there's not a lot of rivalry between the provinces. We're all generally the same. And one I guess characteristic that most Canadians would describe the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada as is, nice people, rural fishermen. Definitely the economies are more based on natural resources, or were. It's changing now. There's a lot more opportunity in Halifax now with tech. It's become a tech hub. Halifax, my city, it's a very educated city. There's I think there's 6 universities in Halifax, so a lot of people have a degree. That's why I went to school. But yeah, it's a nice place. It's changing more now as all of Canada is. The last time I went home last year, you notice a lot more immigrants. And yeah, the city of Halifax, it's changing a lot. There's a lot more development, investment, and noticeably more construction, more condos. So yeah, it's a nice place, but it's changing like all of Canada.
Mm-hmm. And of course, for many Canadians, Nova Scotia is actually, I better make sure I got this right. Sidney Crosby's from Nova Scotia, right? Is it Cole
He's
Harbour, New
from,
Brunswick, or Nova
yeah,
Scotia?
Nova Scotia. Yeah, he's
It's
from
Nova
Cole
Scotia,
Harbour,
right? Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, he's from about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes down the road from where I grew up. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's been a couple other pretty big name
Well,
hockey
yeah.
players. Brad
So
Marchand.
for any Latinos watching this, so Sidney Crosby, wow, who knows? For me, for many Canadians, he's like a hockey god. So he'd be like the Lionel Messi for Canadians. So he's from Scotians province, and other good players, like I said, Brad Marchand. But because he's French, isn't he? Isn't he a Frenchie is he from New Brunswick or Nova Scotia?
Well, Brad Marchand, I think, is from an Acadian community, or his family anyway. I haven't watched hockey that much, to be honest, in the last really 20 years after I stopped playing it as a younger guy. I just kind of lost interest. But I mean, they had Halifax just hosted the World Juniors.
Yeah, exactly.
And they won. So it's a pretty big deal, especially for people that live in Canada year round. Hockey is a huge deal. I spend the winters in Colombia, so I'm not in Canada. And good luck finding a pub that has the hockey game on, right? Like you're never going to see it.
I saw on Twitter that you showed some Colombians the hockey fights, and they were pretty amazed by how violent the sport can get.
Yeah, they just thought, we're these crazy violent, savages. Perhaps we are when it comes to sports, but off the ice, we're pretty nice people.
And like in Alberta, we have a bit of a rivalry, of course, with Ontario, and we're not big fans of Quebec. I'm wondering, with the Maritime provinces, do you guys have any rivalries with other provinces in Canada? Do you guys have any strong opinions about the other provinces?
No. Well, yeah, generally we don't like people from Toronto because
I think most Canadians don't like people from Toronto.
It's not like we hate them. It's the same in Colombia con los Rolos, or in Mexico con los Chilangos, or however you say people from Mexico City. Obviously, people from smaller regions, they don't like the big city people. Mm-hmm. And that's normal, I think, in any country, some, regional rivalries. But definitely Quebec is not liked by Alberta very much. And I mean, you ask most of these people from Alberta, have you ever been to Quebec? And they'll say no. Well, I've been to Quebec. I've lived in Quebec. Lots of my friends, it's a 10-hour drive to Quebec City, about 12 or 13 to Montreal. So a lot of Maritimers have been to Quebec, and we like Quebec. Quebec, of course, is a French-speaking province. It's a unique place. They're very proud of their history and culture. They're nationalist. And you're probably going to have a bad experience if you go to Quebec and insist that everyone there speaks English to you. And, we all know how to say, bonjour, comment ça va, comment allez-vous, all that stuff. But if you speak French, like I do, when I was living in Quebec, my French is not so great now. Ever since I moved to Alberta, I don't speak French. But when I was going to university, I had a job in a French-speaking call center, calling people in Quebec. So my French was really good. And when I went to Quebec and I lived there for about 6 months, I had really positive experiences with people from Quebec, and even Toronto. I haven't spent a lot of time in Toronto, but I was working in a city near Toronto about 4 years ago called Sarnia. They have quite a few oil refineries there. So I'd go to I go to Toronto on the weekends, and it was great. I really like Toronto. Would I want to live there? Perhaps not. It's a bit too big, and it's definitely a corporate city. But my favorite city I've ever lived in Canada, I've lived coast to coast, man. I've lived, and by
I think you lived in Vancouver too.
More than say 3 months. I've spent, I grew up in Nova Scotia, spent 6 months in Quebec, spent 3 months in Ontario, probably spent about a year in Saskatchewan, in Estevan and North Battleford, which were both awful places. Lived in Calgary, lived in Fort McMurray, Edmonton, and I lived a year and a half in Vancouver and 6 months in Victoria. And I really, really liked, still do. I love Vancouver. Vancouver, when people say it's, one of the nicest cities in the world. I truly think it is. Especially for the natural surroundings with the ocean and the mountains. I really enjoy outdoor activities. I love hiking, and I like to scuba dive. I love sport fishing, and all of that is world class in coastal British Columbia. So especially Vancouver and Vancouver Island, with the capital of Victoria. Living in those two cities, if you like the outdoors, it's a pretty good time. Yeah, but better than anywhere I've seen in Canada for sure.
I completely agree. I think Vancouver is my favorite city. I lived there for 4 years when I was
Oh,
studying,
nice.
and I tell people who are thinking about going to Canada, visiting Canada, or moving to Canada, like, if you like outdoors, Vancouver's the place to go. Like, I understand you probably know lots of Colombians that want to go to Toronto, and I understand. But me personally, just like you, I don't really like Toronto. I never really been there, so I can't say. But like you said, for me, it's very corporate.
Yeah.
And I'm from Alberta. I prefer more nature. I grew up in the countryside. So when it comes to nature and city, Vancouver is one of the best in the world for sure. I completely agree.
Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate that how expensive these cities are. When I was in Vancouver, I was working in an oil site, and I actually lived mostly in Burnaby. That's where I was working.
Yeah.
And Burnaby is great. I was near Simon Fraser University. And as a single guy with no kids, I could keep my costs down. My one bedroom apartment was $1,500 a month, so it was expensive, but I could manage. But certainly people that move to either Vancouver or Toronto, you're gonna have to be aware of the costs. They're pretty high, a lot higher than Edmonton.
Yeah, I think lots of Latinos think about moving to Canada because right now, obviously, with the government, they're pushing for lots of more immigration. And I think lots of Latinos, we're going to get paid a lot more money and life's going to be great. But you got to take into account the cost, food, rent. It's very expensive in Canada.
Well, it is, especially in those big cities we mentioned. But at least with the Latinos, the ones that I know, I met a lot of Mexicans in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And, even over the years, met lots of Latinos from pretty much every country. The ones that show up and are willing to work a lot and, have a few roommates.
Yeah, that's
a lot of Latinos grow up in multi-generational households. For them to live with roommates is not a big deal. It's normal. I think most of them prefer to have roommates, with other people around. So if you're willing to rent a house, a 3 or 4 bedroom house and have 5 or 6 or 7 people in there. I did it when I was younger. When I first moved to Alberta, we had 5 guys in a 3 bedroom apartment, right? Some of us were working out of town, so we weren't always home at the same time. But if you're willing to sacrifice a bit on certain things and, if you're cooking at home, and having roommates, taking the bus for the first couple of years, for say 3 years, save your money, and then, maybe think about buying your own place or buying a car or whatever. But don't think, especially if you're doing more, basic service type jobs or entry level retail or fast food, like those types of jobs. Yeah, you're not going to be driving a Mercedes within the first 6 months. You have to have some realistic expectations. But pretty much every Latino I know who has moved to Canada has been successful. There's still there's a lot of opportunity in Canada. If you're willing to work hard and save your money and you're not, partying all the time, you can still party a bit, of course. You can definitely make it work. But the downside that I think a lot of people don't mention is it's a difficult adjustment. I think not only the weather, in Alberta, it's 6 months of cold, maybe more, 6, 7, I don't know, 8 months. Like, depends on what you consider cold. But
I think for most Latinos, even I was looking at the average weather in Alberta in the summer. I was like, what is our average temperature? And it's plus, I think it's 23 degrees Celsius. In average. July, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah. Which to them is not hot.
For most Colombians, for example, for them that's freezing weather.
Oh yeah, they'll be wearing scarves. I mean, here in Colombians from outside of Bogota, you know, in Tierra Caliente, in Cali and La Costa and wherever, Santander, they think Bogota is cold. And I just laugh. I say, Bogota, I walk around in a t-shirt here. You know, Bogota for me is great. It's a bit too rainy. It does rain a lot, but you know, a daytime high of 18, 20 degrees. And then at night it's 10, 12. Like for me, that's agreeable weather. But for Colombians, they just think, you know, Bogota is just this freezing place. Like, yeah, wait till you go to Canada and you know, it's minus 30 and you know, you're walking down the stairs. Yeah.
I've heard stories of Latinos that they don't, you know, they do all the work to go to Canada to immigrate, and then they don't believe how cold the weather is. So I heard about one Chilean family, and I think Chileans, they might think, oh well, Chile, we have 4 seasons, we can handle the cold. But this Chilean family, they did all the paperwork, they moved to, I think, Quebec, and I think they left after a few months because they came in the winter because it was just too cold, and they didn't realize what it means for Canadians. When we say 6 months of cold, we're meaning like minus 15, minus 10 degrees Celsius every day for some winters, 6 months. It literally lasts 6 months. Sometimes we're lucky, maybe 4 months, but a lot of times it's 6 months of minus 10.
Don't count on being lucky.
No.
And of those 6 months in Alberta, anyway, you know, December, January, February, even March, you know, minus 10 is warm. Minus 30, minus 40, man. Until you feel the coldest I've ever experienced was minus 42, and man, it was cold. So there's the weather, you know, the climates, and then the people, because Canadians aren't as generally friendly, especially as Colombians. They're, I mean, people are nice, and it's a high trust society. But
I would say respectful. We're respectful to people, but we're not friendly.
Yeah, not as I guess outgoing as perhaps Colombians. But so that's another aspect of moving to the country where, you know, if for any of your students that are planning to or would like to move to Canada, you know, there's various factors. Overall, it's a good experience, especially if you want to make some money and live in a country where, you know, you don't have to worry about you know, danger in the street. Like you can relax. You can take your cell phone out and use it in the street, not worry about it. But there's going to be other aspects that you don't like, that you really, really don't like. It's like everywhere, man. It's culture shock. It's a different culture. So but overall, I would definitely encourage any of your Latino listeners to go to Canada if that's what they want to do. For sure, it's a great place, but it's not all, you know, positive, I guess.
Yes, no. The grass isn't always completely greener on the other side. It's not all rainbows and butterflies in Canada.
6 months of the year you can't see the grass because it's covered in a meter of snow.
It's white. It's completely white. But still, I prefer the white more. Actually, I don't know about you, but for me, the worst month in Canada is
April.
Like October. Well, no, for you, April. For me, October, November. I was born in November, but when there's no snow and the leaves are gone, it's just, there's like, and there's no birds. It's brown. It kind of feels like hell on earth, like the 9 levels of Dante, and you're going down to hell. It feels like you're just above hell. If you go down one more floor, you're going to be entering hell on earth. It's interesting for me because you said you studied in university to be a French teacher. And teachers, I think anywhere in the world, aren't well paid. I guess I know too. I'm an English teacher. And then you go from studying to teach French to be in the oil patch welding. So I think a huge difference in wages, I'm guessing, when you first started working in oil patch. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I never became a teacher because I did my undergrad. So I did my, you know, 4-year degree. And had I decided to become a teacher, I would have had to go back to university for another year or two to get my actual teacher certificate. So I come from a family of teachers. My father was a teacher. I have aunts that were teachers at the time, and still, a teacher can live relatively well. Obviously, you're not making really, you're not getting rich, but
Yeah.
it's a rewarding job. My job now, yeah, I make pretty good money. Like I make twice what a teacher makes in 6 months, and well, más o menos, and yeah. So once I moved to Alberta and I saw the opportunity, I decided, yeah, I'm not going to be a teacher. But that being said, my job working in oil and gas, at the end of the day, it's not the most rewarding job. I don't come home after work saying, oh, I had a real great night in the refinery helping, I don't know, weld some pipe, but for me, the ability to spend half the year in Latin America certainly makes it worth it. Although that comes with, some downsides. It's difficult to maintain a relationship when you spend half the year somewhere else. And I'm often staying in work camps, so I'm not even in my city, right? Last year, I have a condo in Edmonton, and actually, my roommate, the guy I have living there, he's from Colombia, and last year I spent 3 months in my condo. So, I'm not home much. I'm a nomad, vagabond.
You're not even a digital nomad. You're just a regular nomad. Yeah.
Well, I'm all over the place. Yeah, I'm not a digital nomad. Oil patch nomad.
Oil patch nomad, exactly. And then what made you choose welding? Because obviously in Alberta, there's lots of trades. Welding is one of the options. Welding is usually one of the best paid. Was there a specific reason that you chose it?
Well, yeah, I met a guy at a house party in Halifax, and I don't do welding. I do welding inspection.
Okay.
So it's a bit different. Like I'm not actually welding the pipe. I'm just making sure the welders do it properly. And he wrote down on a piece of paper, take this course at SAIT, the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, right, in Calgary. And I took it, and I got a job, and that was it. And the job was good. It still is good. It's gotten better. I've been doing it for about 15 years. So, I've kind of increased my pay and responsibilities, stuff like that. So it's good. Yeah.
And obviously we're going through a downturn right now, Alberta, with the oil patch. Were you worried when that, the oil prices started going down that you're going to lose your job, or did you feel like you had enough experience that everything was going to be fine?
Well, in 2015, when it really crashed, yeah, I was worried. We were all worried, but I never lacked work. I always worked when I wanted to. As a seasonal worker who's willing to, work 12-hour night shifts in Northern Alberta in a work camp, there's not a lot of people that are willing to do it that can do it. There's it's not the lifestyle everyone wants, but I like it. So, and I've built up enough connections, and I'm pretty good at my job. I'm not an all-star, but I think I'm pretty good. So yeah, I've always been able to work, man. Always. And I've moved to other provinces. I've worked in British Columbia, Ontario. I'll go where the work is. So yeah, I've never lacked work. So knock on wood, if I can find some work,
Yeah, for sure. And so actually, maybe you can help me, because
sure,
I don't know if you have a good relationship with your father, but I have a kind of a typical Canadian father that doesn't really speak to me that much. And he works in the oil patch, and he is an instrumentation programmer. Do you know what an instrumentation programmer is? He's my father, but I have never had any idea what he actually did at the work sites.
Yeah, he's probably doing like programmable logistic controls, basically setting up pumps and motors to function. It's like some of his tasks would be similar to an electrician. There's definitely electrical involved, but it's more, I think, diagnostic and computer based. And those guys, they come in. I don't work with them too much because I'm working with welders. They're more on the electrical side. But yeah, they're just making the automated machinery work in a plant environment. Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought. Maybe that's why he never told me, because it's
kind of boring
description.
I mean, I don't talk about my work either. It's like, you know, my actual job, it's kind of boring. I do it because,
Yeah.
you know, the lifestyle, but the actual job and the tasks involved, yeah, it's not really that exciting. There's
Do
better
you ever
things to talk
get
about.
do you ever get, sometimes that happens to me with Latinas, they'll say like, why don't you ever tell me more about what you do? Why don't you tell me more about you? And you know, like maybe in my case, it could be more interesting than what happens in the oil patch. But for me, it's like I work
Yeah,
hard. I don't really want to go into the details. Not really that exciting what I do. I don't really know why you want me to talk about
yeah. I mean, I could talk about it if you want to fall asleep. You know,
it.
I could go into great detail about
Yeah.
the metallurgical composition of stainless steel welding rods, but yeah, you're probably not
It's
going to be too interested. So
pretty boring.
yeah,
So yeah, let's go on to the next topic. Let's talk more
yeah.
about you, baby. Let's talk more about you.
Well, yeah.
I think the last question about work. Now you work a lot in the famous, well, for me, they're famous. Maybe for people in Latin America, they don't know about them. That's why I want to ask you about them. The famous work camps. I'm
Yes.
wondering if you could describe for the people, what is a work camp? What is a work camp? What is a work camp like? What's it like living there? What are the people like? What's the culture like? Because it's, it's constantly
Um,
changing. Yeah.
well, these work camps, so they're encampamentos de trabajadores, right?
Mhm.
They're remote, usually in the woods, like the forest, whatever,
Mhm.
where I work. And so northern Alberta.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, you could have anywhere from 50 people in a camp to 5,000. The big ones I don't like because there's just too many people.
Mhm.
But some of the smaller ones are pretty good. The last one I stayed at probably had 600 people. It wasn't too bad. So, I mean, when you go to camp, I mean, I have videos I could share with you, but everything is paid for. So
Mhm.
you have your small private room, and inside that room you have, you know, your bed, a small desk, a closet. You have your bathroom, and that's obviously where you sleep.
So it's a more
And
or less a
then
studio apartment.
yeah, but even smaller, man. Like
Okay.
yeah, they're pretty small.
Mhm.
Like something you would imagine in the
So
army or something.
it has everything you need, but like a really small version of it.
Yeah, I mean, you're in your bedroom primarily just to sleep.
Yeah.
So then, you know, you come out of your bedroom, you walk down the hall. Depends on how big the camp is. The last one I was in, you know, it took me about 2 minutes to walk to the dining hall, so the kitchen. So that's where you're going to have your breakfast, and that's where you're going to pack your lunch to go to work. And then after work, when you come home and you know you shower or whatever, then that's where you're going to have your supper, your evening meal. And if you're working 12-hour shifts from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., there's not a lot of time for anything other than working, eating. There's all gyms nowadays, they have, or sorry, all camps, they have
Mhm.
gyms. So I try to get to the gym 3 or 4 days a week for an hour if I could. And I usually was able to do that. And then it's kind of nice because with unlimited food, you know, you can get some gains in the gym.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's all right. But yeah, the camps are they're good, but if you remember that Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day, where it's just the same thing every
Yeah.
day. So the
Yeah.
last project I worked on was about 11 weeks, 10 and a half weeks. And I was working 6 days on, 1 day off. In that 1 day off, you know, I did my laundry and I went to the gym and I just slept more and maybe
Yeah.
read some books or watched some movies on Netflix. But yeah, it's that's why I like it, because I can just go to work for 2 or 3 months and then take time off. In this
Yeah.
case, I'm off for about 4.5 or 5 months. I think I'm going back to work in around April. So I
Mhm.
flew to Bogota, Colombia from Edmonton, Canada on, I believe, November 10th.
Okay.
And then I'm going back on March 14th. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I think I had one more question about the counts for you. Okay, but more or less, if somebody's interested in them, Like you said, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. Even though
Every
it
day.
sounds, it's kind of like an all-inclusive resort for oil workers because like you get
Yeah, that's a
everything for
better way.
free.
That's a
Yeah,
great way to explain it.
yeah,
All-inclusive resort. It's
yeah.
not like prison. It's more like a resort. Yeah. And you get paid. You get paid.
Yeah, you get paid to be there. But of course,
Yeah.
well, are there? I'm guessing, but I'm guessing I'm guessing there's not a lot of women that work at the camps. It doesn't seem like something that a woman would want to do, but I'm guessing there are a
well,
few, but it's mostly
yeah.
men in these camps.
Well, a lot of the staff at the camps are female.
Okay.
Pretty much all of the cleaners. A lot of Filipinos in my camp. The cleaners, a lot of them were Filipinos, so Asian.
Yeah.
Well, like Asian Latinos, Filipinos,
Yeah,
and
for me, Philippines, so yeah, Asian Latinos.
and Somalian, so East African. And then in the kitchen, there was a lot of Arabs, a lot
Oh,
of
really?
Lebanese. And I actually met this guy who worked in the kitchen of the last camp I was at. And I was speaking Spanish or something on my phone. I was leaving someone a mensaje de voz in WhatsApp,
Yeah.
So this guy comes over to me, hey, amigo, hablas español? And I said, yeah, man, you? He says, he lived, I think, 20 years in Venezuela and a little bit in Colombia too.
Okay. But he's
in
like
the 80s
Lebanese
and
and he lived in Venezuela?
yeah.
Okay.
So born in Lebanon, moved to Canada when he was like 12,
Okay.
lived in Canada for, 15 years or something, became a citizen back in 1980, whatever. And then in, I think, the mid 80s or something, he moved to Colombia and then Venezuela, and he stayed there until like 2005. And he just couldn't make it work anymore. So he came back to Canada and he's been working in the camps for the last few years. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to just meet this random Lebanese guy who, I heard him speaking Arabic, I heard him speaking English, but he's heard me speak a little bit of Spanish. So he approached me, asking me where I learned Spanish. I said, Colombia. He's like, oh, I used to live in Santa Marta. Yeah. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. Now talking about going to Latin America, because that's how I know you. I discovered you, I think in 2014, 2015. You were, for maybe Latinos. I think actually it's kind of funny because right now there's a whole bunch of Latinos, middle upper class Latinos in Mexico City, Bogota, complaining about the gringos coming. And because we're writing guides, but it's kind of funny that they don't know that we've been doing this for a very long time. Scotian's one of the guys that I first read about, writing about Colombia specifically. So I'm wondering, when did it first occur to you to go to Colombia, go to Latin America?
Oh, well, that's a story that kind of goes back a few years. Okay, so as I mentioned, I grew up in Halifax, outside of Halifax. There, back then, man, in the 90s, early 2000s, there was barely any immigrants. If I met an immigrant in Halifax, 20 years ago, they were likely Arabs.
Yeah,
just cracking a monster here, bud. This is a real oil patch drink of the Alberta oil patch.
You can't go to the oil patch. Yeah.
So I can't recall ever having met a Latino person in my life until I moved to Edmonton. So when I moved to Edmonton in, I think, May or June of 2006, the vacancy rate for apartments was like less than 1%. It was very difficult to find an apartment.
Okay.
So I found a room in a house. Those are two very East Coast accent words that people will call me out on. Room and host. Anyway.
Okay. For sure.
So I had to go online to find a room. So I found one back then on Craigslist.
Okay. Yeah.
And the landlords were Chinese, which, is pretty common in Canada. And I had two roommates, two guys I never met. One guy was a guy studying at the University of Alberta. Again, this is Edmonton, and white guy from, I think, Winnipeg. And the other guy, Arturo, was Mexican from Guadalajara. And we all started hanging out. We were roommates. We were all young. And I went out one night with Arturo, and he brought this Colombian girl, a paisa from Medellin.
Oh, in Edmonton, there's a paisa in Edmonton?
In Edmonton, yeah. This is 2006. So I never met a Colombian girl in my life. I have no idea about anything, typical what your average Canadian would know about Colombia. So anyway, I fell in love with this girl. We dated for like 3 or 4 months, but she had to go back to Colombia where
Okay.
she, you know, um, continued working in her family business. Of course, she
Yeah.
got married, has kids. I've never seen her again. I never contacted her for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. But
Mhm.
I said to myself, I was really in love, man. I definitely fell for this girl, and she had to go back, so she kind of broke up with me, like, sorry, Ian, I have my life waiting for me in Colombia, and I said, okay, so anyway, I just said to myself, I have to go to Colombia one day. There's going to be more girls like this, and
Yeah.
it took me 6 years to get down there. I went to school. I
Yeah.
started in my career. I, you know, I wasn't really traveling then. I was focused more on career. Bought
Mhm.
my apartment. You know, doing typical Canadian things. I had a truck and a dirt bike, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I eventually got down to Colombia. So, excuse me. I By that time I had some more Latino friends. I was kind of studying Spanish. I took some night courses at Mount Royal University in Calgary,
Yeah.
and then I was going to some Latino bars, whatever, trying to meet some Latino people to practice
Yeah.
Spanish. So I met this other Colombian girl from
Mhm.
Bogota, so Rola, and
Mhm.
we were just platonic friends. We still are.
Mhm.
She lived in Calgary, Alberta for probably 12 years. She's since moved to Spain. But anyway, she said to me, listen, Scotian,
Mhm.
I'm in Bogota every Christmas for a month. And if
Okay.
you ever want to, come to Bogota to visit the city, just let me know.
Mhm.
So in 2010, 2011, after working a few years in Alberta, I just said, I can't do the winter thing anymore. And by that
Yeah.
time, I had money. I had a few years in my career, in my trade, so I had some certificates where I was able to the I was able to begin working only seasonally from April until November.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Latin America, and I'm going to try to find a place, try to find a country where I can just go there every year. And
Mhm.
I flew to Bogota. My friend Gloria, she met me. She helped me find Airbnb, like an apartment in Barrio Chapinero, which any Colombians
Yeah.
will know that barrio. It's like a university type of place.
Mhm.
She helped me find a language school, and then she went back to Canada. She was with me for maybe 3 days, and so it was great. So my plan, I stayed my first winter here, I think for 3 or 4 months. And my plan was to go to Ecuador, go to, Peru, Bolivia,
Uh-huh.
but I
Yeah.
didn't go to any of those places. I just stayed in Colombia. And I've been coming here every year since. So that was my first time in Colombia was January of 2012. And here we are,
Okay.
January 2023. So 11 years I've coming here every year, and it's
Mhm.
been great. I've gone to Ecuador. I'm going to
Mhm.
Argentina next week, but
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed Colombia, and I've been all over the country. I've been to lots of places in Colombia,
Mhm.
and so yeah, I was lucky, I think, that I found a place that I really liked so
Yeah.
much. I didn't have to travel all over the world because I have friends, other gringo buddies here who've told me, they said I spent a year traveling around the world. I went to Asia. I was in Asia for 4 years, and I was, you know, wherever else for a couple of years. And I finally came to, Bogota and Colombia and fell in love with it. So I think I was fortunate to have found Colombia like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, it's actually my story is very similar. Obviously, not exactly the same, but yeah, I met Mexicans in Vancouver and they showed me Mexican food. I fell in love with the food. I wanted to learn Spanish. And then I never went. Well, I went to Latin America like twice because I did have a girlfriend from Mexico. And and then I had a roommate also from Guadalajara. I don't think it's the same
Cool.
guy. That'd be crazy coincidence for some reason it was the same guy. But I had a roommate, and then one day he brings home a Colombian girl, And yeah, just like you,
Oh wow.
in my case, I didn't date her. Unfortunately, because she was absolutely gorgeous, one of the most beautiful Colombian girls I ever met. I actually made a video just saying the main reason that I wanted to go to Colombia was because this girl came to the basement suite in Vancouver, and she was absolutely gorgeous. That yeah, I wanted to go to Colombia. So yeah, very similar story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you went to Colombia, and what were some of the things that attracted you to the country? What made you fall in love with it?
Well, I didn't know much about Colombia. Again, this is you know, 10 plus years ago, say even 15 years ago, because there was like a 5 or 6 year time frame between me deciding I have to go to Colombia someday and me actually getting there.
Yeah.
And so I was doing research, um, and I found that the Spanish in Bogota is a very neutral accent. They say that a lot of CNN hosts or international Latin like Spanish hosts are from Bogota because the accent is very neutral. So Bogota is known as a great place to learn Spanish, and
Yeah.
I think that is true today. I'm here in Bogota now, and when the locals speak to me with their Orolo accent, I can understand it much better than anywhere else. Like especially if I go to Cartagena,
Yeah.
even the Colombians from Bogota and Medellin, they find the Cartagena and La Costa accent to be difficult. And
Yeah.
for us gringos, it's even more difficult. I suppose if you learn your Spanish in Cartagena, perhaps it won't be so difficult, but it is for me. And I've been to Dominican Republic. I've been all over Mexico. Some of the accents in Mexico were pretty difficult around Cancun, in Yucatan, Quintana Roo, that region. I struggled a little bit, but when I was in Mexico City, the accent there was okay. I could understand them. But Dominican Republic, whew, yeah, again, it's all the
The Caribbean,
Caribe, the Caribbean accents.
Spanish.
I mean, it's similar in French. If you speak to Haitian people,
Yeah.
or in English, you speak to a Jamaican. I've been to Jamaica 3 times, and as a native English speaker, I couldn't understand Jamaican English until I actually, kind of studied it a bit to understand what these people are saying. So I guess it's just a Caribbean thing. But yeah, what attracted me to Colombia was, well, the fact that a Colombian friend was going to be there to help me. That was number one.
Sure.
At the time, the exchange rate, our dollar, which at the time back in 2012, the Canadian dollar and American dollar were roughly equal. Yeah. And we were getting 1,700 pesos per dollar. So now the Canadian dollar is double, and the American dollar, as we all know, it's floating around 5,000 pesos now. So, yeah. But even then, the prices were reasonable. They still are. And then just looking at the geography of the country, Colombia has 2 coasts, Atlantic side, Pacific side, lots of mountains. And then you can almost pick your climate here. There's very hot areas, especially on the Atlantic coast. Oh my God. And, but then there's way more moderate temperatures. And, we had this conversation before. As Canadians, especially, my blood is Celtic, man, like Scottish. I can't stay too long in Cartagena, Santa Marta. I can be there for maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. After that, I have to leave because I get sunburn, and then just it drains me. And so I went to La Feria de Cali before coming here, and I stayed in Cali for almost 6 weeks. And I love Cali. I think Cali is my favorite city in Colombia. But after 6 weeks, I was ready to come back to La Nevera, Bogota. And when I got off the plane, then I felt that cold air. I said, yes, I'm back in, Tierra Fria. And yesterday, I spent the day in Boyacá. So my friend from Edmonton, he lives in, he spends 6 months a year here. He's similar to me. But his family all lives near Tunja, the capital of Boyacá. and it was
Yeah.
cold there too. When I arrived in the morning, I arrived around 9 a.m. It was probably 12 degrees, maybe 15. And then the daytime high at 1 or 2 o'clock was 20, 22. So very similar to Bogota. And
Yeah.
it was really good. We had a really good day on his farm. So yeah, that was fun, man.
Mhm. And when you first got to Colombia, were there any specific culture shocks for you? For me as a Canadian, obviously the Colombian culture is completely different than the Canadian culture. So
Yeah,
was there
well,
anything
for
that really
sure.
shocked you when you first set feet
Um,
on the ground?
well, I mean, the people that I met were very friendly. In 2012, there were far fewer gringos in, say, Zona Rosa de Bogota.
Yeah.
So I would go out with, it took me a while to make some friends. So I would go with my language school.
Yeah.
Like my friends, German guys and
Yeah.
a couple Americans. And then we started meeting Colombians. And after a couple weeks, met some Colombian locals. And so the people were pretty nice, genuinely curious. Reminded me a little bit of people from Atlantic Canada. They'd be pretty keen to talk because they just perhaps hadn't met someone from Canada before or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Another cultural shock was and this was from day one. So my first 3 days in Colombia, I was with my friend Gloria, who grew up in Bogota, and her mom.
Yeah.
And as you probably know, Colombians in general, especially in the big cities, are very paranoid about
Safety.
danger and violence.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
Most Colombians have experienced danger and violence. And we come down here from, Canada, for example, a very high trust society where you just walk down the street, you don't worry about people having these, bad intentions. And then you come here and the Colombians, so Gloria, my friend, she really emphasized how I have to be careful, don't give papaya and just, don't wear your nice watch. Be careful when you're taking your cell phone out in the street, all this. So it was really a lot for a Canadian guy like me to absorb. And I'm happy that she was paranoid because she's correct. She's right. Down here in Chapinero, you want to be careful. And, but if you take proper precautions, there goes my stove again. I mean, I haven't had too many bad experiences here. I've had a couple. I've had a couple times.
Well, yeah, actually,
bad stuff happens. But
Colombians usually ask me that, like, have you ever been robbed? So in my case, I was robbed in Centro in Bogota, and I was pickpocketed during Carnival in Barranquilla. So Colombians always want to know. So have you ever been robbed in Colombia?
Yeah. Couple times.
Yeah, so it's funny because it's but you take proper precautions, not that bad.
The first time I lost 300,000 pesos.
Yeah.
So
but what, like they put a knife to you and they said, give me your money, or did they pickpocket the money from your pocket?
No, that was scopolamina.
Oh, you got scopolamine.
So okay, I got drugged and robbed. That was in Medellin. And also in Medellin, I received fake bills.
Oh,
that happened twice actually in taxis.
Okay.
In Colombia, the 50,000 pesos, the note, the bill, whatever. Oftentimes, people, the first question you pull out the 50,000. Oh, no tiene más sencillo, right? It's a big bill. Yeah. And so these taxi drivers, my taxi ride cost 10,000. I pull out the 50. Oh, no tiene más sencillo. No, que pena, no tengo, And then the guy kind of goes in another pocket and he pulls out, okay, here's your 220,000 peso. So, okay, gracias, señor. And I go, I'm not, Colombians are looking at the bills. I don't do that because I don't know what I'm looking for, to be honest. Exactly. So then I go to buy a hamburger. And, I think when I paid for this taxi was 50,000. It was the only money I had. I was downtown Medellin Anyway, I'm trying to
Yeah.
get back to Laureles.
Uh-huh.
And so I order a hamburger and I go to pay with the 20,000, and the guy just
Yeah.
says, "Yeah, this is fake." I said, "What?" And I have the other, "Is this fake?" He's, "Oh yeah, these are definitely fake." Like, stupid gringo, come on. I said, "Well, sorry, I can't pay for the hamburger." He says, "Yeah, sorry." And I had to walk home, and it was like an hour, good hour walk, not through some not so nice neighborhoods. So those things have happened. Fortunately, I've never had a violent confrontation.
Okay.
I have friends who have. There's been some bad ones, but overall, myself, I'm pretty cautious. I'm more so now. I mean, I'm 40 years old, man. Ya soy viejito, soy muy juicioso ahora. But 10 years ago, I don't know. I was, going out a lot. And that's another thing in Colombia, that there wasn't really a culture shock. And I guess I wasn't even that surprised because, of course, Latinos have a really good reputation for nightlife, for loving to party. And acá in Colombia, la rumba, people like to go out. And so I was really impressed how good the the bars and the nightclubs in Colombia were. And you had mentioned the Carnaval de Barranquilla. I went there my first year, and I've been to Feria de Cali probably 6 or 7 times. So yeah, I really enjoy the energy here in Colombia with the people, with the partying. Although I'm not going out so much these days. No me gusta tener guayabo. And guayabo es una palabra muy colombiana, cierto?
You like to be hung. You don't like to be hung over all the time.
No, man. Well, I remember I was in Mexico City, and I used that word, and I don't know, I'm with a Mexican girl, whatever, and she's like, ¿Qué dijiste? ¿Qué significa eso? I'm like, guayabo. And she's saying like,
because like Mexicans say
está crudo.
La cruda was it? Yeah. Tengo
Yeah,
la cruda,
yeah.
algo así. Yeah.
Any more questions, bud?
Oh, of course, we got lots of questions. Okay, so back to Colombia. Well, so you have tons of experience in Colombia, and you've been in almost every city, just like in Canada. So
Más o menos.
More or less, do you have a favorite city? As of right now, do you have a favorite city that you like to stay in? Is it Bogota or is it Cali? Or is it,
Cali.
Or do you like to always be in different cities?
I do move around a lot. And every city, in Colombia in particular, because of the, I guess, the geography of the country with the Tres Cordilleras, and the coasts and just the history and the demographics. So these cities are very different.
Yeah.
The people are very different. It's like different countries almost. The culture are so distinct and unique. So Bogota is very different from Medellin, and Medellin is very different from Cali, and Cali is very different from the coast. So I really like to move around. But my favorite city, I would say, is Cali. And excuse me, the only thing I don't like about Cali is the heat. It gets pretty hot.
It seems like you like the rumba. Is that the main reason you like Cali, or is there a different reason that you like Cali? Well, and also on your Twitter, it seems like you really like going out to the countryside, and it seems like there's lots of crazy nature on the Pacific coast. Is that another reason why you like Cali?
Yeah. I mean, the people are really nice. Caleños they're very outgoing. They're very nice. There's not so many other gringos there, and I don't mind other foreigners. It would be hypocritical of me to not like foreigners. But if you go to Parquilleras in Medellin on a Saturday night, the foreigners, it's a bit like, oh my God. So in Cali, there's just fewer, gringos, borrachos. And anyway, I always had a good time in Cali going out, and the seafood there is really good because it's close to the Pacific Ocean with Buenaventura. So in the 6 weeks I was there, man, I probably had cazuela de mariscos like a
Oh,
dozen
it's
times.
delicious. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and we went to
it's like because
Buenaventura and we were
Colombians always talk about like
oh
food. They talk about like bandeja paisa all the time, and bandeja paisa really isn't that great. Like it fills you up,
I don't
but
like it.
no,
I don't like
like I never
chicharrón.
hear Colombians talk about cazuela de mariscos, and it's
Oh,
delicious. It
it's the
is
best.
amazing. I had it for
It's
the first time a
amazing.
few months ago. I was like, why
Yeah,
didn't anybody show me this before?
yeah, cazuela de mariscos con arroz coco. So there's a
Oh
area
yeah, for
of
sure.
Cali. There's a market called
Yeah.
Mercado Alameda,
Okay.
and yeah, it's just that entire market and outside of the market is
Mhm.
full of these seafood restaurants, and they have promotions, dos por uno and whatever, cazuela de mariscos, and so yeah, that Pacific flavor in Cali is really good. The people are super nice. It's a bit cheaper for
Yeah.
Airbnb and hotels than Medellin and Bogota. I like Bogota because I can wear I can wear pants and a sweater in the daytime and not be
Yeah.
sweating. And
Yeah.
at night it's a bit cold, so I like that. The people of Bogota are they call it like the Athens of South America. It's a very educated city. You can meet
Mhm.
some pretty educated people. It's just more cosmopolitan, the city.
Yeah.
And then Medellin, of course, it's a beautiful city. Like there's no doubt that Medellin, I think, is the most beautiful city in all of Colombia. When you go from the airport in Rio Negro into the Abura Valley, it's
Yeah.
impressive. Like the valley is nice. It's very green. It's very lush. And then you have some really nice shopping malls there. Some very trendy areas, El Poblado, around there, Provenza and Laureles, those areas. It's nice, but it's become too popular for me. Like it's almost too cool. I'm not really a cool
Yeah.
guy. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I work in the oil patch. I'm from a small fishing village.
Yeah.
Like I'm not Mr. Cool. I
Yeah.
prefer to be in El Campo con los campesinos. Just you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I like things that are more
Do,
tranquilo.
do Colombians ever look at you weird? Because I'm very similar. I grew up in a forest on a farm, and I'm very similar. I was never really into the super cool things. I preferred to be in more relaxed settings, but sometimes for Colombians, yeah, because I always when I'm in Colombia, I always say like, have you been to Medellin? Do you like Medellin? Why aren't you in Medellin? That's like, and for me, just my personality, I kind of get annoyed when like you have to go there because it's cool. And it's like, no, I don't have to be there. And yeah, I have been to Medellin. It's okay, but I don't want to be there just because it's cool. But yeah,
Mm,
do a lot of, and even
yeah,
for me, like, yeah, for me, I'm Campesino Canadiense. I guess you consider yourself
yeah.
Campesino Canadiense.
De la
So for
Costa
me,
Atlántica.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you're a Campesino Atlántico. And
Costeño,
because yeah,
canadiense.
yeah. I always find it weird kind of how
No,
in Latin America they kind of treat campesinos badly, or even obreros, like trade workers. They
yeah, it's
treat
different.
them.
It's the whole class thing that
Yeah,
doesn't really exist so much in Canada. I mean, in Canada, a welder can make as much as a doctor, so it's
yeah, exactly.
literally. Um, so yeah, the whole Medellin thing. Again, I like Medellin. I think it's a
Mhm.
beautiful city. I like the Paisa people, the culture, although they're a little bit too much business minded sometimes. Your
Yeah.
barber is trying to get you to invest in some Bitcoin thing. Like, listen, but I just want a haircut. If I'm going to buy crypto, it's probably not going to be
Yeah,
with you. But I
yeah,
respect the hustle for sure.
yeah.
But again, I don't even like really big cities. Like Bogota is way too big for me personally.
Mhm.
I think if I was to live near Bogota in, Cundinamarca, I would live maybe an hour away in
Yeah,
Chia or somewhere else. And
yeah,
well, yesterday when I was in Tunia, which is 2 hours away,
yeah,
it wasn't bad. 2 hour bus ride, that's okay. But
yeah.
I don't need to be in a big city, man. Even Cali is pretty big. I think one of my favorite areas is definitely the coffee zone.
Yeah.
So the cities of I spent a month in Armenia. I've spent a few days here and there in Pereira. Probably spent about a month in Pereira. And Manizales, I've been to the Feria de Manizales, and Manizales is really nice because it gets cold at night too. The coffee zone is my favorite area of the country, but every time I'm there, like I'm alone, so I don't usually stay that long. I like to have a couple gringo buddies around, or at least like an international crowd, and I didn't really find it in those cities just because they're small, more foreigners, and kind of the international crowd are in obviously Bogota and Medellin. Another city that I really like in Colombia is Bucaramanga. Bucaramanga is very clean, well organized, and pretty safe for Colombia standards. Although the women have the reputation for being las más bravas in Colombia.
They always say that they're really angry. I don't know why.
I never saw that. I just thought it was a nice city, man. Great city there in Santander.
Actually, there's one. I think there's an American investor that lives in the Costa. I don't know why he's living in the Costa, but he lives there. And he said that his favorite city in Colombia, and the city that nobody really pays attention to is I always say it. I don't know. Bucaramanga. The Colombians always say you say it wrong. I don't know how to say it. Bucaramanga.
Bucaramanga. I don't worry too much about that.
But I'm pretty sure
it's good. Yeah.
All right. Now those are his favorite cities. It seems like your favorite dish is cazuela de mariscos. Do you have a favorite drink? Is there a juice or a drink that you love in Colombia? Because for me, one of the best things about Colombia are the juices. And whenever I'm away from Colombia, I'm always, thinking about that mora and leche.
Oh yeah, man! I got some right here, bro.
Oh, you got maracuya?
I suppose this is a jugo de mandarina.
Oh, mandarina. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday in Boyacá, I had jugo de banano and leche. I'm not too picky. I don't have a favorite. Mora, I like just any fruit, man. The fruit here, like I had a ensalada de frutas yesterday, and it was like 12,000 pesos or 15,000 pesos, which in Canada, a quarter is I couldn't finish it. I didn't finish it. But I mean, the fruit here is good. When I was drinking more, I don't really drink too much nowadays, but I actually like aguardiente. I like guaro. Yeah, I mean, it has that anise kind of black licorice flavor.
Well,
I like
for me, it's the same as sambuca. Have you had
it's similar to sambuca, but sambuca is more syrupy. I find the guaro is just easier to drink, and it's such a simple drink that most 90% of Colombians, if you're buying a bottle and you buy guaro, they're gonna say, okay, fine. So I like Antioqueño Tapa Azul.
Yeah, with sugar or without sugar?
Well, yeah, the Tapa Azul is without sugar. Yeah.
Without sugar. Yeah, the blue one. Yeah. All right, good. And of course, you spent a lot of time in Colombia, and first you studied to be a French teacher, so you learned French and learned Spanish. So I'm curious to know, what was your Spanish language learning journey like? Was it straightforward? Was it a crazy mess? Different schools, by yourself?
Yeah, it's all over the place. So when I arrived in Colombia in 2012, I had studied a bit of Spanish, but it was very, very basic. I would call it just survival Spanish. I could count and hola, buenos dias, that type of thing. So in my first week here, that was the first thing I did, was find a Spanish school. So I studied at a school called Nueva Lengua in Chapinero.
Yeah.
And I think I did like 3 or 4 weeks there. And so I had a routine, Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to noon. I went to Spanish school every day. Back then, they didn't really have all these apps that they have today, like Duolingo.
Okay.
There was fewer options. But I mean, going to school, some people will say, hey, don't go to school. It's a waste of money, waste of time. I like school. I like the routine, and I like being in a classroom environment with other students. I'm a little bit competitive, so like I want to do well. To me, it's motivating. Whereas here, I'm at home. I got this book. How many times have I opened this book in the last 2 months?
Yeah,
maybe 10 times. I might.
That's actually pretty good. 10 times.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I find it hard to be motivated at home. I have Duolingo, so I'm on Duolingo, but you really have to study the grammar. So I've taken school. I went to school in Cali I used to have
Yeah.
a little school in Cali called Gringo Lingo, but
Oh,
that
really? That sounds.
doesn't
I
exist
like it.
anymore. I studied at one in Medellin called, I think it was called El Elefante or something like that in Laureles. That was good.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, I study at home. I listen to a lot of music in Spanish. Like I like salsa caleña.
I was just gonna
Um,
ask because you seems like you like the rumba.
yeah,
But like, do you know how to dance? Because obviously, when you tell Colombians, "Oh, I like
yeah,
Colombian music," the first thing they
yeah.
ask you is, oh, "Do you know how to dance? Like bailas, bailas?"
Bueno, sí, claro, pero pasos básicos. I studied. I went to a salsa school
Yeah.
probably 7 or 8 years ago called Sabor Manicero in
Okay.
Cali, and I've taken private lessons. And so yeah, I can dance a bit of salsa, but well, I just came from Cali, so yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Although I didn't really go out that much. We I was going more to the gym. So my
Okay.
focus now, I'm 40 now,
Yeah.
and I really, really don't like having, guayabo. I don't like to be hungover. And at 2 in the morning, I don't want to be at a nightclub. At 2 in the morning, I want to be
Yeah.
in bed sleeping.
Yeah.
So my lifestyle has changed a bit, but yeah, I certainly, I've gone to some big nightclubs in Cali, here in Bogota, and I'll still go out. I went out a few times over the past couple months I've been here,
Yeah.
but generally around midnight, man, I'll go out. I'll go to restaurants, and then I'll go to a bar. But by midnight, I'm going home, man. I want to go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, then,
Yeah.
yeah, Latinos take partying very serious. They'll stay up
Yeah.
until 6 in the morning, and for them that's normal. And
Yeah.
obviously, when you're young in Canada, you do the same, but it's not like every weekend. And there's Latinos that will do every weekend till 6 in the morning party.
I used to
Yeah.
do it. I used
Yeah.
to do the same thing, but you know, like anything else in life, it just gets old, man.
Yeah.
I was yesterday in Boyaca playing with cows and chickens and cats and dogs and, feeding cows. And I thought to myself, this is really
This is the
nice.
life. Yes.
This is the life. So maybe I'm going to become a farmer. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, for me,
Vamos a ver.
that's a sueño. That's a sueño colombiano for me. Get a finca
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, live out the rest
Oh,
of your
yeah,
days. Yeah,
for
in the
sure. Finca would
countryside.
be amazing.
Yeah. Quick question. Last thing about Spanish. How
Yep.
students will always ask me how long it took me to get fluent. So in your case, more or less, how many months, how many years did it take you until you were finally speaking Spanish?
Well, that's a good question. I consider myself fluent, but not perfect.
Yeah.
Like, no sé si quieres que te hablo en español. Bueno,
No.
puedo conversar,
For me, you
you
speak
know?
Spanish, and
Yeah.
for there's different levels of fluency, right? There's like fluency where you can have a conversation in the
Yeah.
streets, and then of course, like super fluency is when everything is easy. So I think what you're saying is that right now you have a decent level of fluency, but of course it's not perfect. But
I
yeah,
have to study
like
the conditional sentences. Like it confuses me.
yeah,
That's why I have this grammar book.
yeah,
But so when I first came here in 3 months, after 3 months, I was
yeah,
able to have pretty basic conversations, mostly in the present tense.
yeah,
I could express myself a bit, in the past tense, like, estuve, me fui, or whatever. And then, but then it's the same every year because I'll come down here for 4 or 5 months. And by the time I leave, my Spanish is feeling pretty good.
oh,
But then I
okay,
go to
yeah.
Canada and I don't really speak much Spanish for,
So it goes up,
6 or 8 months. So it's up and down, up and down.
yeah,
And, but generally speaking, I would say that after about a total of a year in Colombia and really studying,
mhm,
I was fluent.
yeah,
And then, already it's been, a decade since then. So yeah, I would say if a person comes to Colombia or, the other way, if a
other way
Latino
around, go
person
to
goes to
Canada, yeah,
Canada, if you don't speak much of the new language, Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to take 3 months to even be able to communicate anything.
Yeah.
To have like simple conversations, very simple. But then after 6 months, yeah, it's one of those things. It depends on the person. It depends on how you're learning, and it's all about the effort that you put in. It's one of those goals in life that it's a tangible goal. It's something that you know that the more you work at it,
Yeah.
the more you're going to improve, the more
Yeah.
rewarding it's going to be. And I enjoy the fact that I can, go to the barber or hop in a taxi and have a conversation with the person, and
Yeah.
that's one thing I really like about Colombians is they are, you know, chatty people. They're
Yeah.
extroverted. They like to talk. They're not,
Yeah.
introverted. And they're generally, it seems like they're generally curious, where are you from? I,
Yeah.
I still don't understand this, but a lot of immigrants in Canada, or I don't even know if it's immigrants, but it's considered rude to ask someone where they're from nowadays. Like it's almost
Yeah.
racist,
Yeah.
like, where are you
Yeah.
from? Oh my God, it's a
Yeah.
microaggression. If
Yeah.
someone asks me where I'm from in Colombia and I say Canada and they ask me about Canada, I am super
Yeah.
excited to
Yeah.
tell you anything you want to know about Canada. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of cold, it's kind of boring, but it's
Uh-huh.
a great country. And you know, I I really don't get how that's like I don't know, a bad
Yeah.
question at all. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Like, so
you know,
any Latinos watching this in Canada, like if I go to the grocery store and I pay for something, and for me, the person, sometimes Filipinos, they could be, maybe it's Mexican, maybe it's Filipino. And so you want to ask, like, where are you from? Especially for me, I speak Spanish. So like if they're Mexican, I want to speak some
yeah,
Spanish to them. But yeah, I'm scared in Canada to ask that because I'm not too sure if somebody's gonna say that what I did was
it's
racist.
really
So
weird.
yeah,
I
very strange.
honestly, I don't want to get too political,
Yeah.
but the culture. I'm 40,
Yeah.
so in the last 20 years, since I was 20, since I was in university, the culture has changed so much that I can't keep up with it, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really gotten really weird. And
Mhm.
so when I'm in Canada, I just go to work, but I work with
Mhm.
usually a bunch of men. So
Yeah.
there's not too many sensitive people around. But
Yeah.
now if I was talking to a group of, I don't know, 21-year-old Canadians, I would be
Yeah.
nervous
Yeah.
because I don't know how they're going to react to how I conduct myself. Like I haven't changed much in the last 20 years. I changed a little bit, I guess. I'm definitely, more mature, but
Mhm. Yeah.
society has changed so much. I don't even know
Mhm.
what's going on. So anyway, there's that.
Yeah. But yeah, I completely agree with you what you said about Colombians. I've been to other parts of Latin America, and for me, the reason that I like Colombia, one of the big ones, is because yeah, Colombians are genuinely curious, whereas I like Mexicans. I prefer Mexican food, but
Yeah.
I find Mexicans don't seem as curious to ask you where you're from. Like I'll go there and they don't really care.
Well,
Maybe they're just more used to gringos because of the proximity.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say. I mean,
But yeah,
Colombia has been,
even in Argentina, like when you're gonna go to Argentina, I find Argentinians aren't really curious either. They're just kind of like,
yeah,
oh, hey, welcome to the country.
yeah. I think Argentina and Argentine people are maybe a little bit in their own little world. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a pretty far place too, but that's an interesting thing about Latin America's each country is very different than the other
yeah,
country. There's a lot of variation, even within each particular country. There's,
yeah,
as we were mentioning before, a lot of difference. So I don't know much about Argentina, but everyone tells me they're kind of like snobby people.
mhm,
They think they're the best of Latin America, but there's so much regionalism that
yeah,
I don't even pay attention to it anymore because I remember being in Medellin telling people, hey, I'm going to Bucaramanga next week. Oh, cuídate con ellos, oh, mucho ojo. There's like, oh, these people from Bucaramanga, they're really aggressive, so be careful. It's like, okay, have you ever been to Santander? Well, no, but, it's lo que dicen, So
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. I just enjoy it all. And I don't expect every person I meet to be outgoing or to care where I'm from or to even want to
yeah,
talk to me. But when it does happen, and it happens a lot in Colombia, I'm
yeah,
more than happy to talk. I'll
yeah,
talk with anyone, man. I'm extroverted, and I like to practice my Spanish. So,
of course.
yeah, I like to be around people that like to talk. So, here I am in Colombia, parcero.
Yeah, that regionalism. Yeah, when I was in Mexico, they all said, "Oh, you're going to Colombia? Oh, it's dangerous in Colombia."
Oh
When I was in
yeah,
Colombia, "Oh, you're in
of course.
Mexico. It's dangerous in Mexico."
Oh,
Yeah,
cuídate, cuídate.
yeah, always cuídate. I think we're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon. But I
All
make a
right,
lot of
bro.
videos
Yeah.
for Latinas giving advice about gringos. I didn't see. I sent you for anybody watching this. I sent Scotian a few questions, basic questions I want to ask him. So this wasn't in the list, but he talked a little bit about how he fell in love with a Colombian girl. So I know he's, as you guys can see, Scotian's not a cold Canadian man with no heart. He's got a heart. Maybe he's a little bit romantic too. He dances a little bit. So I'm
Un
just wondering,
poco.
Scotian, for any Latinas who might be watching this, any Latinas who watch my videos about advice about dating gringos, is there anything that you think they should know about going out with the gringos there? Because, there's always those culture shocks between
Um,
intercultural pairs. Anything that you've experienced that you think they should know about?
well, no, let me think here. Okay. From my experience, I mean, as far as them, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I
Right?
say. Keep
Especially
being you.
Colombian. Yeah,
Yeah.
just keep being Colombian.
Yeah.
As much as you can. But you have to understand that when you're dating a Canadian guy, American, Anglo, whatever, and the girls have told me this, we are not super tierno.
Mhm.
Like the girls would say to me, oh, ¿por qué no seas tierno conmigo? And it's just not in our nature to always be, oh, amor, amor, te quiero, te quiero. And also, we're not so, what? We're not so celoso. I'm not going to send you 20 WhatsApp messages a day. ¿Dónde estás? ¿Con quién estás? ¿Qué estás haciendo? I'm not going to do that. Anyway, there's that. So
No, I completely
yeah,
agree. Yeah, I completely
you
agree.
know,
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because I only send you one WhatsApp message a day and I haven't seen you, don't think I'm out with other girls. And
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't want to have multiple girlfriends.
Yeah.
Like that's not, one is enough.
Yeah, I think a lot of I think a lot of
Right?
especially Colombians, but I think Latinos in general, they can't believe that there's men in the world whose main goal is not to have 10 different girlfriends. It's like
Yeah, it's too
I like
much.
women, but
Yeah,
like
I don't need to date three
oh,
girls. Like I have other things in my life to do
yeah,
than
it's a lot
be
of
on
work. A lot
WhatsApp
of
all
work. Yeah.
day. And
Yeah.
no. So yeah, as far as dating advice for Latino women is basically don't worry so much. Keep doing what you're doing. I think Latinas are generally really nice girls. So yeah.
I think
Suerte con los gringos.
And I think the last question I want to ask you before we end this, because you talked a little
Sure.
bit how you you love Canada and you
Yeah.
love Vancouver, for example, but you also
Yes.
love Colombia. And of
Yes.
course, Latinos ask me the same question. So thinking about your future, and you're 40 years old now, it seems like you're really thinking about, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my days? So if you had to choose, would you rather spend the rest of your days in Colombia or Canada?
Yes.
Would it be both? What would
Colombia.
it be? Colombia, without a doubt.
Well, I mean, there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
If I was a 60-year-old man who was retired, I would much rather live in Colombia. For the weather, the prices, take advantage of that. But if I was to get married in 2 years and have a kid or have two kids or maybe three kids, have a bunch of niños, then maybe I would want to live in Canada because I'm a single guy now, right? So as a single guy, Colombia's probably better. As a married man with children, maybe Canada is better.
But is it more? Because I think it's the same for Colombians too. Like when they think about going to Canada, it's more about like secure. Is it more like security and education? That's why you'd want to be in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be stressful here with children. Not impossible. I
Yeah.
mean, perhaps if I have children with a Colombian woman, maybe. Vamos a ver lo que pasa.
Yeah.
You know, if I lived in, I don't know, Armenia or Bucaramanga, you know, maybe that would be más tranquilo, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
think
So
about that more when the time comes.
when time comes, yeah.
Yeah,
No pressure. No pressure,
no
Scotia.
pressure.
All right. Well, Scotia, I took a lot of your time. I'm really happy I was able to talk to you because, like I said to
Yeah,
everybody,
thanks.
I've been reading about Scotian ever since 2014, I believe. So it's nice to see him, not in person, but somewhat face to
Hey,
face.
maybe one day we can meet in Edmonton or Bogota.
Yeah. Well, actually, going to Argentina, I'll be in Argentina, so hopefully we'll be able to meet in Argentina. We'll see
That would
what
be
happens.
great.
And well, you're more of an anonymous guy. You're not like you have a business online. You have a Twitter. Do you
Yep.
want to drop your Twitter handle in case somebody wants to see your adventures in Colombia?
Sure. It's Scotian. So SCOTIAN 82.
Perfect. And I'll leave the the username down below in the description. So, anyways, Scotian, again, thank you very much. Enjoy Bogota, and
Will
we'll
do.
see you soon. Okay.
All right, guys. We'll see ya. Ciao.
Bye.